former General Ben Hodges, I'd love to discuss with you, as the Ukrainian war drags into its third year, what your current battlefield assessment is.
I think that the Ukrainians are going to spend the next several months doing four things. Number one, they're going to try and keep the pressure on Russia's energy infrastructure. So we're going to keep seeing these strikes happening. We're going to keep seeing strikes against Russian ships in the Black Sea. I mean, this is an area where they can keep making progress. And frankly, Crimea is the most important place. That's the decisive terrain of this war. So I think we'll keep seeing different strikes against Crimea, airfields, seaport, headquarters, logistics, that sort of thing, as they continue to get better and better with their own long-range drones. And now finally, there is something called the ground-launched small diameter bomb, which is about a 90-mile range precision weapon that finally has just arrived. We may start seeing some of that. None of those are going to win the war, but anything that reduces Russian headquarters, artillery, and logistics and makes Crimea untenable, that's a good thing.
At the moment, you have, I hesitate to use the word stalemate, but you have largely fixed positions on land, but fierce fighting, with Ukraine sadly enjoying a disadvantage because of the failure of the United States to pass the aid package, which would ensure getting the equipment and the ammunition Ukraine needs to get through this slugfest in a positive way. But at sea, Ukraine continues to rack up victories, and actually in the air as well. I mean, the taking down a few weeks ago of that Russian command aircraft, and at sea, of course, the sinking with it last week of the Russian corvette, an amazing achievement. And they've also shown an ability to strike deep within Russia with the drone attack on the Ust-Luga export facility for gas and oil, and to make individual Russian monsters like this lieutenant colonel in charge of bombing Ukrainian civilians by taking him out in the city of Angles, 500 miles from the border with Ukraine. All feats, true military feats, which demonstrate Ukraine's advantage in initiative.
Why do I remain optimistic? I think you can inform your readers that this is actually the 10th anniversary of the war, not the second anniversary. It started in 2014 when Russia invaded and illegally annexed Crimea and openly supported so-called separatists in Donetsk and Luhansk. And of course, these are not separatists. That's a joke, but I mean, that was the facade that they used. And so beginning in 2014, they have been trying to defeat Ukrainian forces, expand their control. The large-scale military operation, or large-scale invasion, did start 2 years ago, February of 22. But if you think about it, Russia, in 10 years, with every advantage, numbers, modern equipment, industry, all of those things, after 10 years, they still only control about 18% of Ukraine. They had more and they've lost some of that. They have suffered what appears to be, according to British intelligence, around 400,000 killed and wounded, and thousands of armored vehicles, thousands of artillery, trucks, everything gone. The great Russian Air Force, with every advantage, has failed to achieve air superiority, which is job one for any Air Force. They have failed to interdict the line of communication that brings new equipment and ammunition from Poland into Ukraine. That's job two for any Air Force. So they have failed, despite huge advantages in numbers and technological edge. They have failed. The Black Sea Fleet, it's a really cool name, but they're not a very good Navy. I think the whole world has watched how Ukraine with drones, air and sea drones, has destroyed a lot of Russian ships. And with thanks to UK and France providing Storm Shadow and Scalp cruise missiles, Ukrainians have been able to threaten the Russian Black Sea Fleet at their illegal base in Sevastopol enough that the Navy has had to withdraw several ships to get them further to the east because they were so vulnerable. And this is Ukraine doing this without a Navy in the traditional sense. Plus, they're now shipping grain again out of Odessa. So really amazing what Ukraine has done against the Russian Navy.
He's right. It's also true that the U.S. administration has been fearful of a Ukrainian gain in Crimea because, quote unquote, that could provoke nuclear escalation or escalation involving other forms of WMD, weapons of mass destruction, by Russia. They've been intimidated by the Kremlin, which again is deeply unfortunate. But the way I see it, in fact, it's not just me, Ben and others see it this way too, is that if we gave Ukraine everything it needs, that means F-16s in quantity, that means tanks in quantity, that means the longer range missiles, the ATACMS in quantity, and we could do that. We have tons of these things, despite some baloney that comes from the administration that we don't. They make up excuses to cover their own timidity. If we did all those things, I don't have any doubt that within a few months, Ukraine would be able to seriously jeopardize Russian supplies to Crimea. This would force Russian forces in South mainland Ukraine to retreat, and B, it would make it, again, hard for Putin to send the supplies, both Russian military needs in Crimea and the Russian civilian administration needs in Crimea. That would greatly increase the cost of the war for him. And it might well lead to Russians leaving Crimea, not necessarily entirely, but because things are hard there. There is no good reason why we are not pursuing that policy. Only bad reasons. According, I think it's British intelligence was talking about Russia suffering 5 or 6 or even 7 casualties for every Ukrainian casualty. That is not sustainable. Putin may have this fierce desire to hold on to what he's taken in Ukraine, but that's not a desire shared by the Russian people. And that's not a desire that the Russian political system can maintain.